Hey guys, today I wanted to talk about a pest that is the bane of a lot of gardeners' existence. I know I've had a never-ending battle with them personally, and that would be aphids. So if you saw my fertilizer video, I showed you that I was fertilizing some mustard greens. Now, when I took a good long look at them, I found that I was dealing with a bit of an aphid infestation. So I wanted to show that to you guys and then talk about what these are and how to deal with them. So let's go take a look. All right, so here are my mustard greens. They're starting to look a little bit more perked up, which is great. I think the fertilizer's starting to help them. But as you can see, there's still some signs, some issues. We've got some damaged leaves here. And that's one of the signs of aphids, is that you have holes in your leaves. The leaves begin to curl up, especially new leaves. They don't spread out as much. They're a little bit more curled. And then if you look at the underside, which we're going to look at this one, then you can see them. And I'm going to zoom up as much as I can. You see those guys? Yeah, so those are aphids, and they are really bad. Okay, so now that you know what aphids look like, we're going to talk about why they are really bad. So aphids, they group up in colonies usually, and their mouths are specialized for piercing into the soft parts of plants, and then they suck up plant juices. Now, as they're doing this, this of course takes away from the vitality of your plants that you're growing, but it can also spread diseases, and if your plant gets infested with them, they can easily completely take out your crop. They reproduce very, very fast. In prime conditions, a female aphid can lay eggs, unfertilized eggs, at least 12 a day, and it really doesn't take them long to reach sexual maturation. And so it only takes a couple of weeks before your entire garden can just be taken over with these guys. You know, I even learned that if your aphid infestation gets too large, they will produce winged varieties so they can leave the other aphids and find new territory to start infecting. Usually they don't produce winged varieties unless they are about to sexually produce and then go into hibernation mode. So yeah, I've noticed that there are a couple of winged varieties in my garden. Usually the fall and winter growing season is a lot easier on gardeners because the pest pressure is a lot lower, which is true for the most part. But I live in Georgia where things just don't get as cold, so it seems like some aphids are still out and about. Most of the time they hibernate in the winter after growing their wings and finding some aphids to hook up with, and laying eggs. And then the adults and the eggs stay dormant until it gets warm enough in the spring, and then they'll hatch and come out and start decimating your plants. But since I live in a warmer environment, I'm having to deal with them now. So today specifically, I want to talk about some ways to get rid of aphids, some that I looked up online and that are kind of interesting. I'm going to be trying some of these methods out in my own garden, but while I was doing my research, I found there's a couple ways. You can spray your plants with a jet of water, and that'll usually knock them off of the leaves, and they shouldn't turn back up. But there's a downside to this. My mustard greens, I believe, would be able to handle this, but if you're dealing with something like cucumbers or something that's a little bit more of doesn't have as strong of a leaf, it can cause them to droop a lot. And then especially if you do it at the wrong time of day, with the added humidity, it can really create an environment that's good for fungal growth. So not a big fan of that. We don't want that. We don't want to take away something and then add a whole new problem to the garden. Another method is that if you want to, you can just smush them with your thumb. That's true. You can do that, but good luck with that. They're always going to be hiding somewhere, so you can try that if you want to. Something else you can do is try inviting natural predators of the aphid into your gardening space. Now, this can include ladybugs. Ladybug larva actually eats aphids. You can also try parasitic wasps. They actually lay their eggs on the aphids, and then the wasp larva will like eat them from the inside out. Or you can try lacewings. Lacewing larvae also eat aphids. There's also varieties of birds that will feast on aphids, like wrens, chickadees, titmice. Now, these are all things that will help you with your aphid problem. And I know a lot of gardeners who especially like to get ladybugs and release them. That seems to work very well, but if you're going to do that, you need to have an environment that's going to be welcoming to these predators. So that means planting things that they would naturally like. They're going to want, at least for ladybugs, they're going to want areas of cover. They're going to want places that they can eat. So that means having a variety of different flowers and shrubs that give them a good hiding spot, that give them stuff to eat. Same thing with birds. If you want to attract birds to your garden, you need to put stuff out to invite the birds, whether it be a bird feeder, bird houses, bird baths, or just having shrubs nearby or trees nearby that your birds can go hide in when they're not feasting on the aphids in your garden. Some of the flowers that I looked up said help with keeping lacewings would be goldenrod, Queen's Anne, and dandelion. So if you're thinking about trying to just naturally attract them, or you want to buy some and release them into your garden, then try planting some of those flowers and plants that will keep them in your area instead of just spending money and then watching them all fly away. So another thing that you can do to try and repel aphids is by planting things that they really don't like. So aphids, for whatever reason, seem to not like really bad smelling stuff, or what they consider to be really bad smelling stuff. That includes things like onions, chives, garlic. They just really don't like it. Other herbs that are very strong smelling, catnip, basil. Well, those vegetables and those herbs might be something to do companion planting, what that is known as. Plant them interspersedly through your garden, and they will act as a natural aphid repellent. I was looking up online, even if you're not doing vegetables, but you do roses. Apparently, roses are really susceptible to aphids as well. And some rose gardeners said that they would plant one onion underneath each rose bush, and that would keep aphids away for the entire season. So that would be something to try out. Another thing that I saw was to do something that's called distraction planting or trap planting. So aphids are usually not too picky about what plant they want to decimate, though it seems that they prefer plants that have a little bit of yellow to them. Aphids love the color yellow, and they love plants that exhibit these yellow colors. For example, I have two varieties of cabbage in my garden. I have a green variety of cabbage and a purple variety. There are no aphids on my purple cabbages. There are aphids on my green ones. This might be something to take into consideration when you're planting. If you're trying to deter aphids from coming in your garden, plant a variety of vegetable that might be a little bit darker in order to have a darker version of it, at least, that isn't as enticing to them. So some more ideas for distraction planting that you can do, keeping in mind that aphids love the color yellow. You can plant things like sunflowers, which I will attest to. I did grow some sunflowers last year and found that they quickly got covered with aphids. Sunflowers are big and bulky enough too that they can handle having aphids on them. We want to try to keep the aphids on plants that are a little stronger and can handle having those sorts of pests instead of the weaker ones that need to be left alone. Some other things to plant, nasturtiums. They have a nice bright orange color, some a little bit yellow. Aphids seem to really enjoy those yellow flowers. Also zinnias. I also saw the cosmos pop up on there, maybe preferably the yellow variety. These are some flowers that you can put around your gardening space to attract the aphids and keep them away from the stuff that you actually want to be able to eat. Another thing I saw, now the internet was a little confused on this one, was marigolds. Some people say that aphids hate marigolds. Other people say that aphids love marigolds, maybe because of that yellow-orange color that they have. I do know that marigolds are usually used as companion plant for specifically tomatoes in order to keep away aphids as well as other bugs. And I did plant some marigolds around 2 of my tomato plants last year. I had some others that were in individual pots, and I will say that I did not see any aphids on either sets of my tomatoes. So maybe I'll show you a picture. I had a lot of marigolds growing around, and the tomatoes were all planted in the same area. So maybe that's what kept them away. I don't know. It also says that marigolds prevent things like tomato hornworms. Now, I did have more tomato hornworms on my plants that didn't have marigolds versus the ones that did. I'll be doing some more experimentation with that later on, but for whatever reason, whether it being that they hate it or that they love it, marigolds seem to be a good plant to keep around your garden to try and get aphids away from the plants that you want to keep. So another distraction plant that I saw that I thought was kind of funny is that in the wintertime, it seems that people use mustard greens as distraction plants because aphids love the yellowish green leaves, and I don't know why. They just go crazy for mustard greens, so people will use them to keep them away from all their other crops. Good news for me, right? Since we're trying to keep the aphids out of my mustard greens, we're going to have fun with it. I guess a bit of a hard time since they seem to like it. So that pretty much sums up for some examples of distraction planting. Okay, so now that we know some natural methods to keep aphids away, we're going to move on to more of the man-made variety. Now, I'm all a proponent for introducing flowers and natural predators that'll help keep the aphids away. But since it's the dead of winter, it's a little hard to grow some of those flowers right now. They're not going to grow with it being this cold. Also, I don't have any onion plants, and I can't really go buy any right now either. So we can't quite use those methods. Maybe that's something to try for summer, or I'll also keep it in mind for the next time I do a winter garden that I might need to add some of those plants to help out with the process. But now we're going to talk about the more man-made varieties of keeping aphids away. And these are the methods that I read about that I'm really interested in, and I want to try them out. So the first method I saw, and I'm going to get it, is to use a yellow sticky trap. Now, I bought these from Amazon. Like I said, aphids love the color yellow. The brighter, the better. And these are in a little butterfly shape with a stake, and you can put them in the ground. I believe you have to peel off the plastic to get the bright yellow and the stickiness to be available. But I'm going to put one of these in my garden and see if it really works. Online it said that this method works great, but I kind of want to see it for myself. Another thing the internet said was that aphids love or hate bananas. At first I was thinking, because they're yellow, but no, it's not that you actually stick a banana underneath your plant. You take the banana skin and you chop it up and mix it into the soil, not even so it's visible, just mix it right underneath the top part of the soil. And it's either that aphids love the smell of banana so that they'll go to the banana and off your plant, or that they absolutely hate the smell of banana and they'll want to get away from it, and so they leave the plant. This one I was a little curious about because I couldn't find the science of why this would work. Bananas don't smell like onions or leeks or garlic. They don't really have a strong smell at all. So I'm really curious to see if this actually does anything. So we're going to try that. Another method I saw was that you fill a yellow bowl up with water and then add a little bit of liquid soap to it to make it so that there's not as much retention. And the aphids, being attracted by the color yellow, will go to the water and then they drown. And then the soap helps them stay drowned instead of letting them float on water. So we're going to try that underneath the plant too. And then the last method, I know I said man-made, but it's definitely a natural method, but using it in a way as a pest control. And that would be to use neem oil. So this is pure neem oil. It's concentrate. I got this at the beginning of my growing season in the summertime last year, and it's worked really well so far. I can attest that this does work, at least for the plants that I've had, at least for my garden, the way I've been applying it. And the neem oil is an oil that's derived from the neem tree, of crushing up seeds and leaves from this tree. It's been a natural pesticide used for years. It's organic, it's biodegradable. It will not hurt anything in your garden except for what you spray it on. Basically, your pets can get around it. It doesn't hurt any of the beneficial bugs like bees. It doesn't hurt worms. The way that neem oil works is that you mix it up. Like I said, you can buy an already pre-mixed solution of neem oil, but you're really just not getting your bang for your buck. I would buy the concentrate because that thing's not even halfway empty. I've been using it for almost a whole year now, and yeah, I still have plenty of it. And the way that you do it is you take a teaspoon and a half of neem oil, half a teaspoon of dish soap, and then a quart of water, and you mix it up and just shake it, and bam, you got it ready to go. I then put it in a spray bottle like this, and you can just spray it directly on the plants. Now, the neem oil is not going to work unless you put it on the plant or on the bugs. The way that it works is once they come into contact with it, it suffocates them and ends up killing, whether it be the eggs, the larva, or the adult of not just aphids, but a lot of different bugs. Another thing, though, is that neem oil smells pretty darn bad. It has that smell of like onions or garlic, or both of those combined times infinity, way worse. So it is rather pungent, and when you spray it around your garden, it's gonna kind of stink for a little while. But that's okay because you get results. But another issue with it is that since it is biodegradable, when it rains, it washes away all of your product that's on the plants. And so once it rains, you have to go back around and reapply it. Now, you shouldn't apply this unless it's in the beginning of the day or towards the end of the day. Probably better for the beginning of the day so your leaves don't transcend into night being damp, because that can cause fungal growth and we don't want that. Another thing is neem oil helps with fungus and bacteria. So maybe that wouldn't be as big of a problem, but you don't want to tempt the fates on that stuff. So I wanted to try these 4 methods. Well, I know my neem oil works, but still I want to show you guys that it works. And I want to see if any of them work better than the other. I'm going to try putting the sticky trap in, the bowl with water and soap, the banana and the neem oil on 4 different plants. And I want to see if these methods work. And then maybe there'll be a surprise. But most importantly, I want to know if aphids love or hate bananas, and why. I'm going to try to figure that out. So I'm going to take you over to the mustard greens and show you my traps. Okay, guys, so I have the yellow sticky trap out. Now for this one, I'm going to put it near this mustard green because since it is so big and bright and yellow, I don't want to interfere with the other methods I'm going to be trying. So I'm going to hide it underneath here. Now, okay, well, now we know that it does stick to leaves. So let's get underneath that. And you just have to put it in the ground there. All right. Okay. All right, so there's our trap right there. Hopefully it ends up working. It did say that they last for 3 months, but it also says to not touch it. So I'm definitely going to make sure to wash my hands after this is done. Let's see. So I've already got my yellow container underneath here, and all I had was an egg carton. As far as yellow, I'm hoping that's bright yellow enough. If I find another thing, I'll end up putting it underneath to see. As you can see, I've set it up already, and it doesn't look like we have any takers, unless that's one down in the bottom. I can't quite tell. But we're going to come back and check that after a couple days. All right. All right, so I've got my chopped banana peel right here, and I'm going to put it underneath this guy. I feel like it would really help because as you can see, that guy back there is pretty healthy. This one needs a little bit more help, and I know for certain that there's those aphids on it. So I feel like if I come back and I find for certain that there are no aphids on this plant, it's like, wow, those bananas worked like amazingly well. So we're going to put the bananas underneath this one. I'm going to put the bananas around the base here of this plant, all sides, and then take a little dirt. Okay, so I put my bananas around the base. I'm sure you can see a little bit of peel sticking out right there. I just briefly covered it, and those guys are ready to go. Okay, so I've got my mustard green right here and my neem oil, and this is how you apply it. All you have to do is peel your leaf back and spray it directly on the underside. Now, unfortunately, you do have to do this on every single leaf. I know that it's a little bit annoying, but it does work. And then if you do have a bigger gardening space, you can always, they have, I don't want to say industrial use, but they have larger sprayers that you can make a mixture of and use that to spray your plants. But I don't have a huge garden. I just have the small one. So I'm just going ahead and spraying it. And it does take a little bit of time, but it's worth it in order to make sure that you have vegetables to use. I also like to spray the tops of them. The underside is definitely though, because that's where the aphids like to hang out. That's where most bugs like to hang out. But just in case, I spray the top too. And there we go. I mean, this plant's been treated. Didn't take too long. I was rather aggressive though, because I do know that this plant is, even though it's doing pretty well and it's the bigger of my mustard plants, it does have a bit of an infestation on it. So that's another reason why I chose the neem oil for this one, is because I know it's going to work. At least it's worked in the past for me. And I'll show you guys the results in about a week's time, and we'll see what happens. So you might be wondering, if I already have a solution that has worked for me so far, why am I trying these other things? Well, I think it's important to be able to expand your knowledge and try new things. I mean, one of these other options could end up working a lot better than my neem oil so far. And like I've told you already, there are some stipulations to this in which you have to regularly apply it at least once a week. And if it rains, you got to apply it again, and it can be a lot of work. So if I find another solution that ends up working for me, then I need to be open to it and add it to my repertoire of garden knowledge. Another thing is, even though I've been growing these, I'm willing to sacrifice them if I need to for at least this experiment, just so I can learn and help you guys learn too. There was one other method that I had yet to talk about, and that's diatomaceous earth. In my first video, I spoke about it a little bit. It is a covering that is also organic, and you can put it on top of your plants, and I've used it before, and it works the way that neem oil does too, is it suffocates the insect. But the aphids, at least, like to grow on, or like to group on the underside of leaves, and diatomaceous earth is really hard to get on the underside of your leaves or your plants. I mean, it does better as a top dressing and stays on the front. So yeah, I did a great job of taking care of the front, but I need something that can take care of the underside of these leaves. But so we're gonna check on these methods again in about another week, and I'll let you know what the results are. Thank you again for joining me in my garden this afternoon, and hopefully you can join me for the next lesson. Okay, bye.